make these videos. You understand me? Because me, I live my life by the blade because God has inspired me to. They try to do magic spells in the forms of psychology. Okay? You'd be surprised how psychology has a magical effect on you. When you walk into a nice church, for instance, it has a certain effect on human nature, a psychological effect, we'll call it. Okay, and there's those who study these effects and they try to use them for their own gain, for political gain, and so on and so forth. So why does a religious man carry a weapon? It goes back to what I said either in part 1 or earlier in this video, where I said the highest form of wisdom is being ready to die for what you believe, either as a warrior or as a martyr. And I, my friends, am both. So no matter what happens, and I don't know what happens, what's going to happen, no one does but God. Especially not the people playing God. Because when you think you know, that's when you know less than everyone else. I don't know what's going to happen. But no matter what happens, I win. And I am more intelligent than they are. Because I practice the highest form of wisdom. Not being a spiritual bottom feeder or those who lead. Conformity and getting people to behave in a standard, very basic, normal way is the pinnacle of mind control. It's the highest form of mind control. Think about it. Anyone can provoke somebody into doing something that they don't want to do. Anyone can blackmail someone into doing something they don't want to do. Anyone can hold somebody's family hostage and so on and so forth and make them do some horrible acts. You know? Simple minds do it all the time, especially in third world nations and even across the border in Mexico. Even right here in America. But to get people to behave willingly in a very common fashion, that takes a lot of mind control. It doesn't necessarily take a lot of genius. You see, psychology was never known as the genius's quote-unquote science. It's probably more often referred to as a pseudoscience than science. When I was younger, my parents told me that the most superficial degree they ever heard of had something to do with dreams, right? And that's psychology. So when you look at the easiest degree to get, it has to do with psychology. Speaking of psychology, this was given to me by my ex-fiancée who was Greek, okay, many years ago. Probably as many as 10 years ago. I chose to wear it today. You know, it's a little bit about forgiveness and so on and so forth. You see, psychology has done more harm than good. The psychology of believing that certain events happen a certain way. It's very interesting how all things work. I mean, you have the case of the Westboro Baptist Church. Almost everything they say is correct, except for perhaps when it comes to them being the elect. I mean, one of the guys there, I believe he passed away, you know, he stood up for civil rights. He was a civil rights lawyer at one point. And it's funny how we tend to think that gays are for civil rights, when J. Edgar Hoover was a homosexual who was caught cross-dressing in San Francisco, I believe it was. But he was caught cross-dressing somewhere. You know, you really need to understand the world and how it works. A lot of you don't. You like to convince yourself that you do, but you don't. You see, the most despicable thing to me is conformity. Because I've researched these things for many, many years. And they seek to play you out by making movies about things. So they say, well, you saw that in a movie. And they'll try to get people in your family to get you to see those movies. So then they can be on record saying, this person saw this movie recently, he got this idea from there. And there's a bunch of little tricks like that. It always goes back to being normal. How do normal people see it? And police, there's two common occurrences when it comes to police intervention into people's lives, and, forcing them into mental health. One is that they are stupid and they are holding on to norms, social norms. Two is that they know what's going on and they're using social norms to take advantage of the situation. Society always goes back to what is normal. Even standards that are set, the word standard and the word normal pretty much go hand in hand, and neither of them are ever the truth, really. The standard in society, for example, is, when a judge looks at a court ruling, he'll say, well, this is what the last judge ruled, so I'm going to rule in a similar fashion. This is what I've ruled in the past. He set the standard. And I could go on and on about this, but I'd rather talk about more important things than what we should all already know. So, as hard as it is for many of you to believe, because you don't know better, Satanism has become the standard. But since you don't understand that, I will say that people who are adverse to Christianity, who believe in materialism, are setting the standards for social norms. Okay? I think we can all agree on that. We can all agree that the people in charge, especially right now, we have a Democratic president, so it's open right now. When the Republicans are president, it's a little bit more confusing because people associate Republicans with Christians, which is not entirely fair. Again, I don't want to go into that, but I'm sure you could figure it out. I'll put it in the comments. I want to make this less than 8 or 9 minutes. Democrats think that they are the positive change and that Christian values are a thing of the past that are part of what conservatives want to conserve. And they are anti-feminist, they are anti-homosexual, and they don't, when you truly become a Christian and you truly examine politics and mental health, you become, Christians are anti-psychology and anti-psychiatry, for the most part. The Christian perspective on psychology is that psychology is a way people manipulate other people and get them to do things, that they want them to do. And that it is not a good thing. That you should be fair with people. You shouldn't play any mind tricks. You shouldn't do reverse psychology. You shouldn't play mental tricks with yourself to try to make yourself feel better. You should pray to God. Okay, so when you really look at the Christians and who is really a Christian, they are always against psychology. They are always against psychiatry, as being socially normative and being the accepted way. But there are times when people are so beyond help. And the problem here is that people pretend that people such as myself are beyond help and need dramatic intervention. The idea that a philosopher or an insightful person cannot make up his own mind shows you how far we have strayed away from the true path in mental health. We teach people that, they teach people that God doesn't exist. Psychiatry pushes atheism. They'll have ordained ministers in psych wards and other institutions as a way to get religious people to accept psychiatric medication for problems that they almost certainly do not have. So it is a very difficult situation the world finds itself in. And I try hard to teach them, you know. Even right now, part of me is extremely disgusted and doesn't want to be calm and collected because they have drugged me, okay? They drug me quite frequently. And usually there are signs, but I don't really, you know, I'm not putting myself in a mind state where I'm going to be paranoid because that would give them more ammo. And as a result, they're more likely to get drugs into me. You know, I'm not looking at everything I drink, you know, scrutinizing it carefully. You know, I might open a cap and, you know, and I say, well, you know, this cap's kind of loose, and I give it the benefit of the doubt. And then later, I have this painful headache. I have muscle stiffness, problems speaking. I'll be speaking fine throughout the day, talking on the phone, talking on the computer, you know, so on and so forth. And then the drugs will hit, my speech pattern will be messed up. I will feel drugged up. I'll have a splitting headache. And sometimes after I work out, my muscles will twitch. When this was never a problem prior to psychiatric medications. And whenever I've been off for a long time, it wasn't a problem. Then when I'm put on for whatever reason, it's a problem again. So when I looked at the Latuda commercial, it said that, you know, stiff muscles and, you know, could be a sign of a life-threatening disease or, you know, medical condition. And so I started thinking, you know, like I usually do. And I put in the comments, I said, these people kill 500,000 people a year. They follow me around and harass me. And it was only after I confronted them directly, you know. When the top martial artist confronts you, you tend to think about your life first. You know, they told me, yes, you know, they were sent and so on and so forth. And, you know, this is not what you would expect for somebody who's innocent. They said, what are you talking about? Leave me alone. They make a big scene. They didn't make a big scene. You know, they knew ahead of time that I had the capability of killing them very quickly. And their reaction was according. You know, exactly what you would expect from somebody who knew that I was a top martial artist already and possibly had a knife and possibly could kill them quickly. They reacted that way. They didn't react how you would expect someone to react to a crazy man confronting them, you know, saying things that don't make sense. What are you talking about? I didn't do anything, kind of thing. They didn't react like that. Instead, they got right to the point, you know, and they tried to save face as much as possible. That's what you would expect for somebody who's in the presence of a warrior who could kill them quickly. They're trying to keep from getting hurt and trying to save face at the same time. Now, you could call this my understanding of psychology, but I wouldn't call that. I'll call it that. I would call it my understanding of human nature. So, as I've seen, you know, off-duty police officers that I've recognized, because I've come in contact with the Santa Clara County Sheriff Department on many occasions. You know, so this is what I'm talking about, this kind of disturbance of my speech patterns. It's very uncomfortable to be somebody who's quite articulate, who has never had problems with speech patterns, all of a sudden having problems because of these drugs. It's impaired functioning. And they're going to say that their drugs help me when I have impaired function. I need to think, I need to be sharp to program. It makes me dull, it makes me slow. You have constantly, there's a lot of people in my profession who don't want to take the majority of psych meds, at least, because they keep them from being sharp and being able to think and be creative and to be themselves. You know, they're anti-creative pills. They're anti-creativity. They are anti-intelligence. They are anti-humanity. You need to be in this very human state of mind to create and to problem solve, to reason, to deduce, and to ascertain the solution. Instead, they want you to feel like a zombie, bewildered and incapable of insight. And then they force their religion on you. Buddhism, when it is not being controlled by the traditional, you know, Buddhist hierarchy, becomes very feminist. It becomes very homosexual. You have gays saying that they were a woman in their past life. You have feminists thinking that they're just as capable as men, and they will cite martial artists, which is nothing could be further from the truth. There are some women who are good at martial arts. They fight better than some men who just aren't really men. But they're not the equal of man, mind, body, and soul, and they're especially not the equal of man spiritually. And I don't expect many of you to understand this, but almost every culture and religion in the world knew that men were superior spiritually. That was the most important thing to them. Our ancestors held that very dear to their heart. You know, and to turn around and pretend like that wasn't the case is very, very foolish. Very, very foolish. When you look at the Igbo culture, for example, the Ikenga, there's three versions of the men, you know, just like in the Trinity. When you look at Egypt and Nubia, strong male leaders. You look at the Zulu culture and the other cultures. Kings would meet kings. The African culture generally was male kings meeting male kings. When they, there goes my chain. When a female rose to power, they didn't have the same respect as men. And a lot of feminists will deny this. It's very interesting. But then there are some feminists who will agree and say that African culture is very patriarchal and they need to address the issue. Well, I went way over time. My chain fell off. So, part 2 coming up. Okay, so we see as, you know, part of the status quo's, the ruling class's agenda, it is to promote feminism, promote Western culture, Western perspectives, to promote homosexuality, atheism, Satanism, and criminality. I go over these things time and time again. I mean, anyone who hears my videos and thinks that I'm homophobic and that, you know, affects my views and so on and so forth, you know, I'm not afraid to, you know, because part of my harassment is they know that I think homosexuals are sinners, so they've put a lot of them in my life. They've had them try to catfish me. I go to restaurants, you know, I go to probably about 30 different fast food restaurants. Probably about 25 of them have homosexuals working there, not only working there, but on the shifts when I go. And it's very, you know, blatantly obvious. I mean, my brother used to live in San Francisco. I'm 45 minutes away from San Francisco. If you think that I don't know what a homosexual looks like and how they come off, I mean, I might be fooled by maybe 1 in 100. I might, you know, there might just be a really effeminate seeming guy and he magically isn't gay. But the other 99, you know, I'm right about. So in this case, I'm almost certainly right about pretty much every last one of them. So how do we know this? Well, part of Greek culture and Roman culture was homosexuality. It was accepted. I've gone over this in my other videos. Young boys would find a homosexual man to, you know, teach them the ropes in life. I mean, it's very disgusting. It's very disturbing. And this is very Western. You look at the rates of homosexuality and the attitudes toward homosexuality for, say, the last 20 years, you'll see a steady increase in the acceptance of homosexuality, and you'll see a steady increase in the rates of homosexuality. If they did accurate polls, you would see that in Africa, you see Africans starting to, you know, magically say they're gay, and some of them starting to say, you know, to accept it more. Now, the left would say this is part of the change of education, of spreading democracy, and, you know, spreading rights and freedoms and so on and so forth. Nothing could be further from the truth. You know, this is a part of, you know, Western culture, and I mean, it's very hard to truly explain to you in a way that you're gonna see that I'm right away. It's a very complex process, really, because not all gay people are stupid. And one mistake would be to make that. One mistake to make would be to say that these are very stupid people doing this. They're not more intelligent than I am, but they're not stupid. You know, they're more intelligent than a lot of people who don't know better about opposing these people, and they end up going along with them. You pretty much have 3 types of people, you know, 3 main categories of people who react to this phenomenon, okay? One is the people who don't know better, and they just don't know what to think, and they're kind of being led. The other 2 groups are people who know better. The people who, you know, the next stage of intelligence, the people who know better, but they go along with it. Because in their mind, they can't think of a way to exist or to be happy or to live their life or to not be afraid without going along with it and playing stupid. On the highest level of intelligence, you see people who transcend, who say, I'm not going to go along with this. I live my life by truth. I refuse to live a lie. I refuse to go along with the spiritual bottom feeders. Okay? So one way to judge a man's intelligence, is to judge his wisdom, which is the highest form of intelligence, and which category does he, fall in, and how far does he take it. So believe it or not, when you truly look at things, the smartest, the most wise people tend to be warriors, because they take it, the warriors who are correct, the ones who are fighting for truth in its pure form, they take it the farthest. They say, I'm not going to go along with this, and I'm ready to die for this. And you see some of them are suicide bombers, as much as society will hate me for saying this, and they'll hesitate to admit it. But Islam is one of the highest forms of morality in any spiritual system, religious system, or system of morality. Others are martyrs. They refuse to take back. Some of them are killed by Muslims, ironically. In Nigeria, for instance, you'll have Christians who are killed by Muslims because they won't, give up their faith. They won't recant. They won't denounce or deny Christianity. You have soldiers who, really believe they're fighting for the right thing, and they're going all out and so on. So the highest form of intelligence and wisdom, rather, wisdom being the highest form of intelligence, and it's, the higher forms of wisdom tends to be found with warriors and martyrs. And there's very few exceptions, because that is the most insightful way to live your life. Any other way to live your life is either you're ignorant, so you're not wise or insightful. You need to be insightful before you can be wise. Insight is like, is a little slightly lower form of intelligence than wisdom, but it takes insight to be wise. First you have to see, and then you say, what do I do? And then you have to make the right choice. So first you have to come to the right conclusion about what is going on. Then you have to come to the right conclusion about what to do about it. And not many people do it, And so you can't be brave without being honorable. And you can't be wise without being honorable. Okay? So it's very interesting how that works. For example, you look at gang members, for example. Are they really brave? No, they're greedy. They're in this kind of, for the most part, they're in this state of mind where their greed is controlling them. Lust will make people take risks that they wouldn't take before. Rapists do risky things because of lust. Gang members do risky things because of a desire to, have respect or to fit in or, to be cool and, and their greed. Okay? So taking risks is one thing. Being brave because you're a man of principle, tends to go hand in hand with being wise. So when you see cops, are they brave? Not necessarily. Most likely not. They are some of the biggest conformists. So either they fall in one of the, they fall in one of the bottom two categories. Either they are ignorant, or they know what's going on and they're too afraid to do the right thing. And it's very interesting how that works. And so then mental health seeks to identify those who go against, I want to call it Satanism, but that's going to turn off a lot of you, so I'll call it materialism. Psychiatry seeks to identify those who go against materialism and are brave enough to speak out about it, or have the insight to be upset about it. They don't want their enemies to reach the point where they're truly wise and they're truly brave and they're truly going against the ruling class. Just like with drapetomania, they say when someone's truly wise and brave, when a slave was truly wise and brave and ran off to the maroon colonies, they said there's something wrong with them, because they don't want you to reach the highest level of understanding, which is to go against the existing class in a way that is to be found in the Bible and the Quran. Now, I'm going to put it very simple for you. The morality in the Bible, and when I say that, I mean the most obvious, no one can deny, we all know, are the morals of the Bible. Okay? Homosexuality is a sin. That's probably the most controversial thing that I truly know is the truth. From years of research and being unbiased and living by San Francisco, not really having anything against gays until they, eventually they made it personal with me and they did what they did. Murder being wrong, when it is not for a divine cause or for the greater good, in a way that is definitively correct. Okay, so thou shalt not kill unless God has told you to kill or has inspired you, and that's a complicated story for another day. Okay, stealing being wrong, not just illegal stealing, but ripping people off legally. To me, if I sell you something that is worth $100 and I make you believe it's worth $10,000, I've basically stolen from you, $9,900. So legal stealing falls under the category of stealing to me. Things that aren't fair play, honorable to do, dishonor. Okay, it's dishonorable to have homosexual sex. It's dishonorable to steal, to rape, to kill. Okay, and if you've done these things, you need to turn to God and to wash away your sins. Again, this is something for another day. So the highest level of understanding is keeping to the family structure, not being gay, not killing people, not stealing, not raping, not doing things that are detestable to the Lord, but doing things that are correct. And when you do these things, you'll find that you're a better person. It goes back to, there's a certain way that when you look at people, a lot of these people, you can tell who's a good person, who isn't. And some of the worst people go out of their way to make you think that they're good. I think with me, if you're really insightful, you can tell right off the bat, this guy's a brave man, he's an honorable man, he's a holy man. Okay? He's a warrior. Pretty much right off the bat. There's some people who are trying to show you that they're one of those things, but they're none of those things. There's some people who are priests who are really gay. If you really examine them carefully with insight and wisdom, you'll be like, this guy is a bad actor. He's a bad apple. He's a bad person. And I hope that he changes so he doesn't become eternally a bad person. Because there is saying that this person is doing something wrong and he needs to change. And there is saying this person is evil and he's going to hell because of what he did. There's a difference. When it says thou shalt not judge, it isn't saying, this guy comes up to you with a knife full of blood, he's acting crazy, he's like looking like he wants to kill you, and you're not supposed to, take note. Of course you are. It is not saying that, or letting a pedophile who's unrepentant babysit your kids. Or even if he is repentant, you probably still shouldn't do it. It's not saying that. It's saying don't judge this person as evil because they still have time to repent, unless they are an unrepentant sinner. If your brother sins, rebuke him. If he repents, forgive him. What does that mean about if he doesn't repent? So I'm not judging you for what you've done in the past. I'm judging you for your inability to repent by labeling yourself a Satanist, by labeling yourself an atheist, by labeling yourself a racist, by labeling yourself a homosexual, by labeling yourself the worst criminals. And so on. So, and then there are the people who refuse to label themselves that, but their beliefs have led them to be that. There are people who say that they're not gay, but then they have gay sex in prison all the time. They think because they're not the ones bending over, they're not gay, but they're gay, and so on. There's people who don't think they're racist, but they're racist, and they refuse to change that. And part of that is by them not admitting to themselves that that's what they are. Okay? So, I rebuke all the unrepentant sinners, especially those who label themselves that way, and those, and of course those who refuse to label themselves that and are that. So it is very sad that we live in this world, where that's how it is. But that's how it is. And I didn't even want to make these videos. You understand me? Because me, I live my life by the blade because God has inspired me to. They try to do magic spells in the forms of psychology. Okay? You'd be surprised how psychology has a magical effect on you. When you walk into a nice church, for instance, it has a certain effect on human nature. A psychological effect, we'll call it. Okay, and there's those who study these effects and they try to use them for their own gain, for political gain, and so on and so forth. So why does a religious man carry a weapon? It goes back to what I said either in part 1 or earlier in this video, where I said the highest form of wisdom is being ready to die for what you believe, either as a warrior or as a martyr. And I, my friends, am both. So no matter what happens, and I don't know what happens, what's going to happen, no one does but God. Especially not the people playing God. Because when you think you know, that's when you know less than everyone else. I don't know what's going to happen. But no matter what happens, I win. And I am more intelligent than they are. Because I practice the highest form of wisdom. Not being a spiritual bottom feeder or those who lead. What's going to happen? No one does but God. Especially not the people playing God. Because when you think you know, that's when you know less than everyone else. I don't know what's going to happen. But no matter what happens, I win. And I am more intelligent than they are. Because I practice the highest form of wisdom. Not being a spiritual bottom feeder or those who lead. Conformity and getting people to behave in a standard, very basic, normal way. It's the pinnacle of mind control. It's the highest form of mind control. Think about it. Anyone can provoke somebody into doing something that they don't want to do. Anyone can blackmail someone into doing something they don't want to do. Anyone can hold somebody's family hostage and so on and so forth and make them do some horrible acts. You know? Simple minds do it all the time, especially in third world nations and even across the border in Mexico. Even right here in America. But to get people to behave willingly in a very common fashion, that takes a lot of mind control. It doesn't necessarily take a lot of genius. You see, psychology was never known as the genius's quote-unquote science. It's probably more often referred to as a pseudoscience than science. When I was younger, my parents told me that the most superficial degree they ever heard of had something to do with dreams, right? And that's psychology. So when you look at the easiest degree to get, it has to do with psychology. Speaking of psychology, this was given to me by my ex-fiancée who was Greek, okay, many years ago. Probably as many as 10 years ago. I chose to wear it today. You know, it's a little bit about forgiveness and so on and so forth. You see, psychology has done more harm than good. The psychology of believing that certain events happen to certain weapon. It goes back to what I said either in part 1 or earlier in this video, where I said the highest form of wisdom is being ready to die for what you believe, either as a warrior or as a martyr. And I, my friends, am both. So no matter what happens, and I don't know what happens, make these videos. You understand me? Because me, I live my life by the blade. because God has inspired me to. They try to do magic spells in the forms of psychology. Okay? You'd be surprised how psychology has a magical effect on you. When you walk into a nice church, for instance, it has a certain effect on human nature. A psychological effect, we'll call it. Okay? And there's those who study these effects and they try to use them for their own gain, for political gain, and so on and so forth. So why does a religious man carry